Welcome everyone. AC EVO has its 0.3 version out, and with that we also have not only the multiplayer but also the first GT3 in the sim, which is the BMW M4 GT3. And I thought, why don't we compare the M4 GT3 in AC EVO against the LMU BMW M4 GT3 EVO. So if you're wondering which is my favorite, make sure to watch the video till the end and leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like that. So without further ado, let's jump first into AC EVO. So we are right now in the sim, and essentially I turned up all the graphic settings almost to max, and you see that just by the looks of it with 0.3 the graphics just look stunning, right? I have to say it's amazing. Like, it looks so photorealistic. Like, if you look into the, ahead to the trees, it just looks amazing, right? And you see really the potential in the future for AC EVO. Well, let's focus now a bit on the GT3 physics more, okay? And just driving wise, I would say overall you feel for sure some load in the steering, you feel when the front gets lighter, for example here when you over push the front. And the first thing which I noticed, and maybe you notice, is if you drive on the curbs at Spa, it feels like with the stock setup, of course, the car is wobbling a bit around, It feels like a bit floaty, if that makes sense, Like also here over the bumps in the road, it's a bit floaty. And I'm wondering if it's a setup thing, but for comparison reason it will just both fix setups in LMU and AC EVO, Immediately, if you drive into a high-speed corner like that, you notice instantly that the car is quite a lot pitch sensitive also here. So I would say you for sure need to be careful with your brake release. And here on the exit you saw the TC cutting really hard, and of course we want to drive lower TC to have less engagement, and it should be quicker, right? Because we have less power cut. But look, the main problem here is that when the TC cuts in, it's a bit too harsh, We'll also see it again in the second sector. But let's focus now for the next corner on the braking zone. So we brake like it's the same braking markers everywhere around here. And you see the ABS is top notch. Like, I would say when it comes to electronics, the ABS is state of the art. Like, it's amazing. Like, you need to trail brake, but the ABS still helps you, to survive. If that makes sense, Like, look, the ABS helps the tire to stay alive, and that's amazing. And I'm so happy that they made this right, because braking is one of the most important things in the sim. And if the braking feels intuitive, you already have like 80% of a, perfect game or sim, I would say. You can agree with that or not. You can write maybe your opinion about this into the comments. But I think that's crucial and fundamental, that the braking feels right, and it does. And let's focus now again onto the C a bit, and you see what I mean now. So when you brake here, look, if I want to use now the TC, see? Fun fact, the sound of the TC cut sounds amazing. But the problem is if you want to use, for example, here the TC, it's the TC cut is a bit too harsh. So I would say if they focus on getting the TC right, they will have a top-notch GT3 sim, which is outstanding in the regard that basically they have so much variety now in AC EVO that they, you wouldn't think that they can make such a great product in that regard, in GT3 terms now, because we focus on GT3. There's also K-dams and such, if you what I mean. So to summarize quickly, what do we think about the first GT3 in AC EVO? I think you could say you feel the potential, what it could be, right? Because the ABS looks good, the steering feels fine. It's just really about them fixing essentially the traction control, I would say. Because electronic wise the ABS is good, the brake bias feels intuitive, you can really trail brake into the corner, you feel the ABS supporting you, but still you can't exploit it, if that makes sense. Then Another thing which needs to be looked at is, you know, the bouncing over the curbs on high speed, like you saw there in the Rouge Radeon or in the LeComp a bit in the medium speed, but this could be also setup related. So with that all in mind, I can say it's not perfect, but it has the potential to be one of the top sims on the market. So now let's jump right into LMU and see how the BMW M4 GT3 EVO feels there. We are right in LMU, and already out of the box you see the visuals are completely different, right? Frame rate wise we have like 100 frames more than AC EVO, right? But you still can't compare full release in that regard to an early access version. But graphics wise, right, you see definitely that AC EVO is one step ahead. Like the trees look much more 3D, and they look here, right, a bit more like, I would say, less dynamic, you know, and that's why they look less 3D basically. Track wise, it's both have the same new layout or spa, right? But I think the curbs are just a bit more updated in the comp here. And generally speaking, I would give at that point the graphics point to AC EVO, but let's focus now a bit on the driving physics. First of all, we have of course cold tires, so we need to watch out here a bit. And we are of course again in the safe setup. And I'll also go for purposes a bit down on the TC. So we have also on the free. For feedback wise, I would say we have a bit more weight in the steering wheel in LMU, you know. So can give you the, you know, the subjective feel that it has maybe more grip, but it's not the case. Then here, I would say in general with this fixed setup, the TC is a bit more optimized in LMU. You know, you can, for example here, the TC cuts in time where it supports me and I can use it to be a bit more aggressive. Whereas right now, when you watch the, you know, AC EVO video feed, it's rather just basically cutting the power instantly, and it can catch you off guard because you suddenly lose the rotation. That's why I think TC off is now the meta in AC EVO. Let's focus now a bit on the braking now in the next corner. So we brake. That was okay. And now we have somewhat decent tire time, so let's try to brake at the same point for turn 1. It's just before the total energy sign here. And you definitely have a bit more mid-corner understeer, I would say here, but this could also be again related to the preset. So let's go for a nicer Rouge here. Let's see if we can make it. Now we need to lift a bit. And the setup is also pretty understeer, so yeah. But with basically just putting the setup in the background and just focusing on the electronics in that regard, because they are like really important. I would say if you go into the ABS in LMU, you get more understeer than in AC EVO. We can try here again in the downhill section. It's a really good example. You see really how as soon as we reach really the ABS, the car definitely tends to understeer more. So when it comes to, you know, ABS electronic logic, I would say AC EVO has a better ABS system, which allows you to push a bit more in the entry. And another big aspect what I just found at Poir is ACC's pitch sensitivity is more aggressive basically, I would say. But if you lose the car because of the pitch sensitivity, you can still save it. Whereas in LMU, I would say maybe you have slightly initially more grip, but when you get into the slide on the entry, like in Poir also, you have a much harder time to save the car. So this is where they differentiate. And curb-wise, just to cover this also, I think the way the suspension interacts with the stock setup feels a bit more intuitive in LMU, because you don't have this wobbling. The car feels a bit more not connected to the road, but it just gets done with the interruption of the, with the motion of the car reacting to the bump. It just gets it done earlier, you know, if that what I mean. That was LMU. Let's jump now right into the conclusion. When it comes about GT3s, there is not really one sim which is completely ahead. It's more about, trading points where maybe one sim does something better than the other and the opposite right now, right? Graphics-wise, if you want to include that, the point definitely goes to AC EVO, I would say. Sound-wise, they both sound really good, and I would just give them equal scoring in that regard. When it comes now to the handling, let's look first into the corner entries. And there I would say that definitely AC EVO feels a bit more intuitive because the ABS supports your rotation a bit better in the entry, so the ABS feels a bit smarter, if that makes sense, so you don't get instant understeer that quick. On the LMU side, it feels like you just get penalized with understeer slightly earlier. When it comes to bump behavior and how the car reacts over sausages and curbs, I would say LMU is slightly ahead because there it feels like the car just finishes basically the behavior when it drives over a curb or so quicker, but this could be also setup related, so let's just in that regard don't put too much focus on that. When it comes then to corner exits, throttle application wise, the TC is crucial in GT3 cars, and for me it felt like the TC in LMU is one step a bit ahead in in that regard, because in LMU I felt I could really dial the TC in and and it helps me to push and to drive a quicker lap time, whereas in AC EVO it felt like it was more of a hindrance. If you are basically a beginner or so, you can just drive with high TC and it's fine, but when you try to push for the limit, it feels like because of the strong cutting in, it was a bit too aggressive and it caught you sometimes off guard and it lost you time. So I found to go quicker when I drove around the TC rather than using it. At the end, to be honest, I think you can be happy either way. You don't need to say this sim is better than the other, in my opinion. Both, as I say, have strengths and weaknesses, and it's, to be honest, up to you. What do you prefer? Where do you put your focus on? What's more important to you, right? I think concerning that AC EVO is still in early access, they developed a pretty strong product and they have such a variety, and that's only one type of car class, right? So in that regard, it's also, I think, a bit unfair to compare it to a sim which focuses on GT3, LMP2 cars and hypercars, But we can do this comparison, I would say, as we have the same car to some degree in those sims, also different BOP-wise. But doesn't matter. At this stage, AC EVO can be happy about their product. Also, LMU can be happy about their product. Both are incredible options. And as I said, just pick the one you like the most. Look where you put your focus on which key aspects are important for you, and then you'll be happy. I thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I see you in the next one. Bye bye.